Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. I'm Reece. Maricela, Sean, thanks for joining us. This is really cool for me. I am new at my job, about 7 months in or so at WSL Pure, and this is a great opportunity for me to learn. So I'm just going to be asking them questions, trying to learn from them because they're pros who've been doing this for a long time. 8 years in nonprofits, 20 years next year working with nonprofits. So these are experts, and I'm trying to learn from them, and I hope you all enjoy learning from them as well. I want to kick it off real quick. Maricela, you have been working with Latino Outdoor Foundation, and you know, your history is pretty interesting, coming from working class, you know, Angelino, Los Angeles family, and then getting into the outdoors late. Do you want to tell us that story a little bit and try and kick it off for those who haven't looked you up like I did, stalking you on Instagram to know she's badass? Like, I was sharing it with all the people in my office the other day. Anyway, kick it off a little bit. Tell us a little bit about your story there.
Thank you for that. Hola everyone, I am Maricela Rosales. Like he had mentioned, I am an Angelino through and through, born and raised here in Southern California. I'm from the mid-city K-Town area, and through upward mobility, moved to the desert and then came back down to LA. So I am a rock climbing ambassador for Mad Rock. I am also the outdoor brands coordinator and advocacy coordinator for Latino Outdoors. I've been doing that for about 3 years now. If you haven't had the chance of learning about Latino Outdoors, they're an awesome organization. We're nationally based. We have 13 regions. 70% of our volunteers are women, and they're really getting out there, trailblazing in their communities, getting underserved communities out to the local state parks, educating them about different sports and activities, while also building their leadership skills and creating this snowball effect where they become the future conservationists of our public lands and our green and open spaces. And so growing up here, I'm an inner city kid. The first rock wall was actually my house. I climbed up, and my parents were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I threw my shoe up there," you know. And it was kind of this concept. They'd call me monkey, and I always had this instinct to climb things. And I wasn't introduced into rock climbing until I got into college. And at that time, I was dealing with 20 years of wearing a neck and back brace, had severe scoliosis, severe muscle spasms, and I let that hinder me for a very long time. And then when I got into rock climbing, it completely changed my outlook to you know, physical well-being, the outdoors, and how I, as a woman of color in outdoor spaces, can make a difference. So with that happening, you know, was introduced to Mad Rock Climbing. They really liked me. I somehow ended up with a job with them, and that is the universe kind of putting me where I wanted to be in my life. And my family, they didn't understand that. They didn't understand like what the purpose was to be in the outdoors and why it mattered to me. So, you know, having to kind of re-educate my family and my community about why green and open spaces matter. Now they understand that it's because moving forward, we have to see the grand scheme of protecting our spaces, whether it's our water, our air, and, you know, green and open spaces, our wildlife. And it's just really exciting to see how people of color are coming into these spaces and really amplifying their stories in the nonprofit world as ambassadors and as athletes, as advocates, and now, you know, looking at politics collectively, just kind of changing the traditional narrative of who's really amplifying the stories of underserved communities.
That was stellar. Sean, do you want to give us?
To follow that?
She's good. Yeah, she's a pro. Do you want to give us the quick Sean story?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not an Angelino, although I wish I could claim that because I see how much
okay.
pride you have in that. I grew up on a commune in Santa Cruz, so that was pretty cool. I grew up outdoors. I grew up at the beach. It's funny, for a guy who didn't step foot on a surfboard until I was 20 years old, I grew up at the beach every day because I played beach volleyball. So I ended up being a semi-pro beach volleyball player. That was my path in life. I body surfed. I did all that. We were very poor growing up, so I didn't have any money for a surfboard or anything like that, as much as I admired seeing those guys out there. So for me, surfing came late in my life, but it was a life-changing moment for me. I started in '99 with Special Olympics. I still volunteer with them to this day, but I ran the snowboarding program for Special Olympics. I was a longtime snowboarder. And through that, I was introduced to someone at Surfers Healing. I went to a Surfers Healing event for the first time in 2001 and was blown away. I'd seen what nonprofit work and what sports did for kids with special needs through Special Olympics, but I'd never seen it have an effect like I saw from a child who entered the water and then the way they were when they came out. and I said, there's something, really special here. And so I kind of dove headfirst into it, no pun intended, and just immersed myself in the world of surf therapy. Met a bunch of other passionate people volunteering with Surfers Healing, and that ended up being the basis for founding A Walk on Water in 2012. We're 6 years in. We are serving over 1,000 kids in need a year now, and we're pretty proud of that. And I think there's the sky's the limit on surf therapy. I think all of you guys know the ocean, the surf, it's therapeutic. There's a reason we all get in the water. Hey, Jesse. Jesse Billhauer, Life Rolls On, one of the originators of what we do here. We all know how powerful surfing is for us and how it can change our mood, change our life, change everything about it. Amplify that times 1,000 when you're dealing with a child with special needs, a child in need, a child who would never have that opportunity otherwise. So for me, surf therapy we're still in its infancy, but the opportunity is massive. And I'm so grateful to see all these people in this room listening to me talk about this, because there's so many people here who are going to play a part in taking it to the next level. So super excited about that.
So this panel is, firstly, thank you. But this panel is building a successful nonprofit in surf and outdoors. And you both have a lot of experience there. Let's talk about some of the challenges you faced right out of the gates. Have you seen barriers to getting your message out there? I mean, one of the first things is getting awareness out to a community to know that there is an issue. Sometimes people don't know that there's a problem, whether it's environmental or social or whatever it is. So have you faced challenges in getting your message out there? Or are communities receptive? I mean, have you faced challenges in getting that message out there, connecting people to the outdoor community within the Latino community? And have you seen challenges in getting your message going? I just thought you two could riff on that.
Yeah, with any nonprofit, there are going to be challenges. One of them is funding. Yep. Like, how do you fund the work so that you're actually reaching out to the communities and meeting the communities at their level? Sometimes we want to have this mindset of here's our mission, here's our vision. We're gonna just shove it down their throats, but you really can't do that. You gotta meet the needs of the community first. You gotta talk to them in a way where it's okay, you're in this community. What is it that you need? What is it that you want to learn? What is it that you're curious about? And then having those intentional conversations first, you're kind of figuring out how you can become a little bit more flexible in your mission and your vision. Challenges can be that, a lot of people of color, a lot of families that are underserved are working a ton. They can't really participate in these activities because they're working. They're trying to provide for their families. They don't have the means to go outside and recreate. And that's one of the things that, as a nonprofit, we're always trying to seek funding from brands and from foundations so that we're able to help facilitate that so that they're not worrying about that. With Latino Outdoors, our goal is to really meet the needs of the community first, finding where we can find that funding, and then execute that project where it's creating a snowball effect where they're going to continue coming back and they're continuing this process of bringing more families in and more youth. And adults too, we're not necessarily trying to target one group, we're trying to target everyone. And, there's always gonna be challenges, and, at the end of the day, it's always about funding.
And so you really have to know your customer, so to speak, right? You have to know who you're speaking to. And I think, Sean, maybe I'm leading you here, but I know that one of the things that A Walk on Water does is you engage all the children of a given family. Specifically, because you know that that's a challenge. Maybe you can speak to that and or any other challenges you face in getting the message out there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, social media, first of all, played a huge role for everyone in the last 20 years as far as getting the message out there. It makes it a lot easier to quickly disseminate information and get people to be aware of what you're doing. Your question around, serving the entire family unit, we identified something really early on with A Walk on Water was that often the child with special needs in a family lives a very disparate life compared to their other siblings who are quote unquote neurotypical or normal. And so we thought there's an opportunity here to bring the family together over a shared experience, a shared triumph. And so we do take the siblings along with the child with special needs, surfing together. At the same time, it allows them to really build on an experience together and, a shared triumph, really, because as anyone out here knows, surfing is not an easy thing. And so for these kids to come out, get the experience of conquering their fear, getting out in the ocean, catching a wave, and then to do it with their sibling by their side, with their parents cheering them on at the beach, there's something really powerful there.
What would you, just to keep riffing, what would you consider the greatest challenge in what you're hoping to accomplish with A Walk on Water?
It's
That's a big one.
I
for
know.
the middle.
There's so many. For me, I think the greatest challenge, and I think anyone who runs a nonprofit will tell you, as you grow, there's this sort of thing where everyone wants you to be everything to everyone. And it's really important, and she's like, I get it. There's a really important thing to avoid mission creep, to stay true to what you do and what you do best and what you know, and not try to say, well, we could get $200,000 in funding from this person if we just expanded our programming a little bit. But you're getting away from what makes it magical. You're getting away from what's so important. So for us, the biggest thing is as we scale and as we grow this thing, and it's growing incredibly quickly, we have to almost pull the reins back in and say, hold on, we need to reevaluate our mission statement every day and stay true to that and say, this is why we started this is why it works, this is why these families who come and sit there and cry with us on the beach, why it's so meaningful to them is because we do it this way we do it. And we can't sacrifice that no matter what size we get to or how much money's coming in. We have to stay true to our roots and do things the right way.
I see you nodding your head there.
I totally agree with what he's saying. You know, nonprofits are kind of like the underdog of community service. And being altruistic is not an easy task to really go out there and do the work. You know, sometimes burnout is really real and, you know, frustrations are really real, or just like capacity-wise. Like when an organization is thriving and growing exponentially quick, you get these challenges of like, how do you maintain that mission and vision while also trying to do good for the community?
You just touched on burnout, which was one of my personal questions that I wanted to ask about. You know, we're very lucky to work in a mission-driven field where, you know, there's a lot of value back to us where we can see making an impact in the world, right? Whether it's social or environmental. And there are days where that mission feels like you got to throw everything you have at it, and we sacrifice a lot of ourselves, or at least I know I do. How do you make time for yourself? I mean, you just had a baby. You've overcome back injuries, and you know need to take care of your health. And then how do you still get outside to rock climb? How do you make time for surfing, or do you surf at all? Yeah. You know, how do you find that balance? I think it's something we probably all struggle with, but particularly in our space is a challenge.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something really important there, and Maricela kind of mentioned it, is that in the volunteer space, in nonprofit space, there's this sort of intrinsic thing to where you want to throw everything of your person into it, to where you do it too much. You know, we always joked about on the board of directors early on, we're like, we need like a marriage therapist in this group because all of our marriages are struggling because at home we're 20 hours a day on a walk on water and we're disregarding the rest of our lives because we were just so focused on driving this thing and making sure we were doing the best we could. So there is a really important thing to where you have to set boundaries. You have to say, I'm going to give this much time of my day to this. I'm going to give this much time to my wife and this much time to my baby. And you have to stay true to that because it's really easy to get pulled in. You know, there's anyone knows who's a leader of any company really, but especially a nonprofit. You have, Chad was just mentioning this earlier from Surfrider, you have 1,000 emails and calls coming in at you daily, and if you try to be the guy who answers every single one, who's that guy for everyone, who's always there, you're going to burn out so quickly, and you're going to struggle to try to make everyone happy. You're going to fail.
So what I'm hearing is I can ignore more emails.
Absolutely.
And it's and am I winning or losing by bringing my wife Annie here today? Is that good?
I would hope it would work out better for you. And don't ignore those emails. Just outsource that and find someone else to hopefully take that on for you.
Cool. Do you want to touch on that one, the burnout?
So I decided 2 years ago to end my 9-to-5 job, and with no savings, with no intention to figure out like what my life was going to happen. I was just going to figure it out. So I quit my job in December and went on this crazy road trip, came back, and I was just like, oh man, I don't have a job. What am I going to do? And somehow, I was still volunteering with Latino Outdoors here in LA, doing like the regional work. And I decided, I'm like, all right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do 70% of the Latino Outdoors work. I don't get paid for any of it, but I love the work and the mission, and I want to help. And then all the other time, I'm just going to have all these crazy odd jobs, and then just make sure that my credit score is solid. That's all that I wanted to do. And you know what? It worked out. I'm very surprised that it did. But that opportunity to really engage myself in the nonprofit world and become this volunteer, I traveled a lot more. But that required me to do a lot of email follow-ups and then just become this person and just be a master of many things that I was slowly realizing that I wasn't performing the best. And then I decided, okay, if I'm gonna do this, I have to do it intentionally. I have to prioritize and outsource some of these emails and kind of delegate, you know, my role to someone else. And it's hard because it's like your baby, you want to take care of it, you know, you don't want anyone else helping you out. But if I'm honest, you just gotta let go. You really just gotta let go. But at the same time, you know, you wanna make sure that you do your job well. You wanna make sure that you are also taking care of yourself. So I started trail running instead of rock climbing because I just didn't have the time to do both, you know, work and, you know, enjoy my free time. For me, I think that really self-reflecting on my time and my space and just my personal self-reflection was important, and that's something that I had to learn, because when you create habits, it's hard to let go of those habits, even if it's something that you're really passionate about. And I had to stop and take a step back. I even like disappeared. I'm like, hey you guys, I'm gonna disappear for a week. And I did. And I came back, and I came back refreshed, but then I also had to limit myself of how much work I was willing to take on. And then at that time, Latino Outdoors was in a huge shift. You know, we lost our executive director. We lost, you know, a few of our volunteers that were doing a lot of work on a national level. And some of the volunteers really picked it up and took some responsibilities and split, you know, these roles, that it made it so much easier. And we're all volunteers, and we all decided to do it together. And it made the organization so much better because we were talking to one another. We were having these conversations. If we felt like we were about to drop the ball, we were like, hey, you know, this is what's going on, can you help me out? So it's like really asking for help is kind of difficult sometimes because you just want to do it right yourself. But at the same time, like, it has to be a team. You have to be a team.
That's great advice. So I'm taking away, find work-life balance, delegate where you can, communicate among your team, don't be afraid to ask for help, just as some takeaways. But we're about to open it up for questions from the audience and or from the World Wide Web. I believe we have some people live streaming in. So if anybody has a question, I believe Juan has a mic. If we see any hands going up, I see a couple. We have Chris Crow, we've got Vipe here. And then while we're getting the mic over there, if you want to throw out Instagram tags, handles, anything for mentions and or events coming up that you have really quickly.
Yeah, if you're in the nonprofit space, you have to mercilessly be marketing at all times. But yeah, we're just at a Walk on Water on pretty much all the channels. So yeah, you can find us there. Our next event is actually our 2-day surf event in Montauk, New York, out at Ditch Plains. So that'll be September 7th and 8th, followed on the 8th by our annual East Coast fundraiser. So big couple weeks coming up for us.
So you can find me on Instagram. That's what I use, at Lemarcy with an I. There is going to be a couple of events here in Los Angeles. We have Public Lands Day, so it's going to be at the Patagonia store in Santa Monica. That should be September 22nd. So we're going to be showing a movie called Estamos Aquí. So if you're interested in learning more about Latino Outdoors, find us online, latino-outdoors.org. Find us on Facebook. We have a group page. And if you are interested in speaking to me, I will be here. And if you want to pick my brain about anything nonprofit related or outdoor advocacy or rock climbing, I also work at Cliffs of Id, which is in Culver City. So if you're also interested in rock climbing, I will be your private instructor.
Dibs,
in multiple languages, by the way. So.
Si.
All right, Vipe, do we have a question?
Hey, guys, thanks so much for sharing the insights and the work that you're doing. It's amazing. You know, look, as I look around the room, I don't see as many surf industry folks that should be here to hear what you guys are doing. So I'm going to ask you the question, you know, look, you guys are doing amazing work. Do you feel the industry values the work that you're doing?
You're asking the surf industry specifically about a walk on water?
Well, surf industry or the outdoor industry, whatever it might be. And Reece, you also have insights into this too, so the question's for you as well. Does the industry, outdoor and surf industry, value the work that you're doing? Because I can see it, but are you getting the support from the surf industry?
Yeah, and part of me wants to be careful here because I have Reece sitting next to me and Sophie in the back. You know, we've seen actually a lot. I was just talking to Sophie about this, that what the WSL has done the last few years. I've seen an intentionality around knowing, you know, what's going on in the space outside of their actual surf events. They have been really active with a few the surf therapy nonprofits out there. They've done a lot with Waves for Change in South Africa. We just did a little something with them at our Huntington Beach event. Felipe came out and Tati West came out. And so we're seeing this understanding and this awareness start to creep into the WSL. I mean, you have to look no further than the formation of WSL Pure and what Reece is doing here. To see that they get it, there's a huge groundswell of support right now around surf therapy. And I hope and I'm confident that the WSL and others in the surf industry will really embrace that and want to be involved. And to the answer to the question, yes, we're starting to see a lot more support from the industry that probably wasn't there 5 years ago.
So I've been in the industry for about 8 years. Worked for Mad Rock Climbing as in-house sales rep. But I also did a lot of visiting the gyms and sizing different folks. And what I would see for many, many years was, predominantly seeing folks of privilege in rock climbing gyms, rock climbing outside, or even at the outdoor retailer show. Now more than ever, you're seeing people of color, social media platforms, blogs, women of color really coming into these spaces and amplifying their story of, we do recreate. We do go outside and we want to protect it, but it's taken such a long time for brands to see that as value. Not to say that they never valued it before, but it's highlighted now more than ever, and these conversations are happening and they're more intentional and it's not short term. The conversations that I've had with certain brands is like, how do we create mutually beneficial relationships that are long term and not just for one marketing campaign that you have for the fall? How can we continue this long term so that we are sustainable as organizations, so that we can create gear libraries, so that we can create better leaders, so that we can create new athletes? And with that sponsorship comes funding, gear, and also just like a platform for us to also speak about why we as communities of color matter in these spaces. Because if you look long term, we're a huge melting pot. Our colors are changing. I might be fair-skinned, but I'm also Chinese and Native American from Central America. It's shocking how all of us look different, but at the end of the day, we're all human. We all love the outdoors. We all should matter in these spaces, regardless of race, identity, ability. It shouldn't matter at the end of the day, but these conversations are still happening. And eventually, I hope that it becomes obsolete, that we as an outdoor industry can continue just moving forward.
And I would really quickly just say that we, at least on the environmental side of things, are fighting challenges that are so great, there can never be enough support. And we are now seeing better alignment within the industry from Surfriders, Save the Waves, et cetera. All these groups are learning to work together. Now that the WSL has started Pure and relaunched it, I think we can help facilitate that within professional surfing. But we don't represent all of surfing yet, so the wider industry, I think, is now figuring out how do they align with us and figure out how to activate all the athletes and get it going. And I would also throw out, I just got to sit down with Barbara from Protect Our Winters, who's right behind you there, just yesterday, and they're kind of a great model, but I think would similarly maybe say, like, climate change is huge, and it's bad, and we need all the help we can get. All of us have to align and work together, and we need as much support as we can possibly get if we're going to stand a chance. One more, maybe, or are we done?
I think that's going to wrap it up for our first panel. Give it up,
cool.
guys. This is our
Thank
first
you
panel.
so much. Thanks, guys.